On. That's probably a good idea because people will need to listen to it a few times to understand what I'm saying. So, hey, you can learn Scottish from it. Anyway, I'm still learning English, by the way. You know, it's like a second language to me. My name's Mick. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm in Glasgow, which is in Scotland, which is a wee country in northwest Europe, right? And if you've never been, you should come. It's a cool place. And I'm a member of a group. I'm in an online a group. It's called the Firing Line Scotland. It's a big book study, and we get together on a Sunday, and it's at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So you can work it out from there wherever you live. And if you live in Scotland, it's 6 o'clock at night. You've got to tell people these things because they just can't tell the time. You know, like in Scotland, you say to people, "I'm sharing at a meeting in New York," and they go, "Oh, what time's that?" Anyway, my sobriety date is when did I get sober? The 26th of May, 1997, and I've got a sponsor, and he's a wonderful man who's very sick. So have a wee prayer for him. And I sponsor other guys, and I do a lot of this AA stuff, and it's just great. You know, it's just I have a lot of fun. I laugh a lot. So if you're offended by laughing or being happy, you know, just click. You can just go because I'll annoy you, and I won't be offended. Right? I won't. I stopped caring. God said to me one day, "Mick, you're going to need to stop that." So I did. But anyway, and Phil, thank you for asking me to come here today. This is quite something, you know, for a wee drunk from Scotland to be on this platform talking to 200 and odd people from wherever you are from is just an absolute blessing, and I am very grateful that I've been given the opportunity. So, my name on the screen, right? I'll tell you this bit as well, right? Because you'll be sitting going, he's got a funny name. He's called Oban Mick, right? So, my name's Mick, right, which is short for Michael, but you knew that anyway. The Oban bit is because I am from the town of Oban, right, where the whiskey comes from, right? So that's where I'm from. And when I moved to Glasgow, they had to give me a nickname. So they just call me Oban Mick. It's not because my parents were very creative when I was christened, right? It's nothing to do with that, right? I'm just called Oban Mick. So there you go. That's all that stuff. I grew up in an alcoholic home. And I grew up in an alcoholic home where nobody drank. And if you say that in an outside Alcoholics Anonymous, people look at you as if you're bonkers. Because, you know, people think, well, how could it be an alcoholic home if nobody drinks? There's only 3 people in the house. There was me, my mother, and my father. And they were both alcoholics. My father, though, stopped drinking. I was born late, right? So they were 18 years married when I was born, which in 1970, that means I'm 50, by the way, right? Just in case you're doing the sums. In 1970, that was quite old. Well, in Scotland, it was anyway, right? So it was a strange house to start with. And this atmosphere always existed, you know. There was always, you had to watch what you said, and you had to watch who you couldn't really bring people in, and there was always tension, right? And my father, he stopped drinking before I was born. He signed himself into a rehab, as we would know it now, got sober, never drank again. But my mother she drank later on in life. Anyway, my father was very ill. He was always having heart attacks and strokes and stuff, right? And most of my pals, their dads would have like a bad cold or a broken leg. You know, my dad would have a stroke or a coronary or something, right? And they were always splitting up and getting back together. And oh my God, it was pretty painful, right? And the thing that was always present in my life was fear. I was frightened of everything. And the biggest thing that I was frightened of was that you didn't like me and I didn't feel part of anything, and that you wouldn't be my friend, and that you wouldn't like my football team, or you wouldn't like my music or whatever, right? And so that led me to have a face for everybody that I met. So I'd have a face for, a face for Phil, a face for Darren, a face for Mags, whoever it was I met. I had to fall into that persona to keep that person happy. And that's okay until you meet everybody at the one time. And then who do you be? Then you're just confused, right? So it's like, they're all here, right? So it didn't really work. When I was 16, my father died. Before that, though, I get drunk, right? Because that's Alcoholics Anonymous, right? So we'll talk about drinking. So I get drunk. I'm 13, right? That's quite old in Scotland. It's a late starter. So I was 13 and I was in this place called Benidorm, which is in Spain. Spain is a country in southwest Europe, and it's really warm in Benidorm. It's in Spain. It's really nice. And they had this stuff called sangria, right? And it came in a wee glass this size, right? This size. And I had two, right? And I was 13, right? So I'm 13 years old. And I thought, I've had two of these. I'm not having any more. And I couldn't do it. The next thing I know, it's tomorrow. And I feel, I feel like somebody, like somebody's driven over my head with a car. And I've been beat up and all sorts of, and I'm sick, and oh my God. And my mother is looking at me with a face like thunder. And my father is smoking about 40 cigarettes an hour, right? And I know I've done something really bad, but I can't remember. That is how I drank forever. But I could tell you lots of stories like that, and I could sit here till next Saturday and tell you how I got drunk and what happened, and how I had blackouts, and how I fell out with people and fought with people and got into trouble. And all these things happened to me. But do you know what? If these things that happened, if they were the only things that happened to me, I'd still be drinking. Because the one thing that I'll tell you, the big thing that happened, because like a lot of guys, right, drink done something for me before it done anything to me, right? So you've heard that before, right? By the way, see the stuff that I say tonight, and apart from the personal stuff, it's just what I've heard before, and I kind of regurgitate it, right? Because I'm not that clever. Anyway. But the fear went away. And that was good. That was good. Now, I'm a kind of, what would you say, extroverted sort of guy anyway, right? So I'm not shy. I don't mind talking to people. And I'll get up and dance, and I'll crack a joke, and I'll sing you a song and do that stuff, right? So you imagine what happens when you put alcohol in, right? It's just like the 4th of July, right? It's chaos, and I'm causing it all, right? And that's okay, and it's funny for a wee while, but people soon get fed up with you, and it started to, well, as I know today, it started to isolate me. And I understand the illness I have today. The first thing that alcoholism does to me when it's starting to really get on top of me is it will isolate me. And the first thing it will do, it will stop me praying. It will stop me having any connection with the fellowship. It will stop me doing any service. It will stop me going to meetings, and then it will leave me alone, lonely and painful to die. And to start thinking, well, this life isn't worth it anyway, is it? So we might as well just leave the planet. And things like suicide becomes a good idea. Taking drugs becomes a good idea. I never done drugs. I was a drinker, right? But all kinds of stuff comes into my head. And then when I got sober, I started to understand that this isolation was something that had been in my life my whole time. I just didn't know it. I didn't know a lot of things. My father died when I was 16. One of the heart attacks that he kept having, it actually worked, and he didn't wake up, and he was dead, right? So I'm 16. My mum, she decided to start drinking again, and I started drinking full time. So from 16 to the age of 20, I don't really, I just lived to get drunk. Then my mother dies. So it's only me, right? Wait, hey, party time, right? No parents. So my mum died, my father died. I've got no aunties, no uncles, no brothers, no sisters. It was just Mick. And nobody teaches you like what to do. What do you do in that situation? So I drank. And why wouldn't I? And I justified it. You've got all that pain in your life, and I'm only 20 years old. People understand. People in the pub would say, it's a shame, the wee man here, because I'm only 5'6", right? The wee man here has lost his parents. It's a shame. Here's a drink. After 2 years, that gets a bit wearing thin, right? Do you know what I mean? You can overstay your welcome, right? And I'd done that big style. And you're still trying to justify it and all that stuff. Like 4 years down the line, and people are saying, Mick, that story's wearing a bit thin, son. Do you know what I mean? At the age of 26, somehow, by the way, in the middle of all this, I get married, right? Don't know how that happened. Something to do with a church and a priest and a girl and that, right? But it all happened, and I get married. I was 26 years old, and God decided that I was getting sober. Me getting sober was nothing to do with me, because I just wanted to carry on this crazy life. I thought I liked everybody and everybody liked me. And I didn't, I just knew that this madness was going on in my life, and the fear and the pain. But my solution was alcohol. Alcohol's not a problem to me. Being drunk is not a problem to me. Being drunk is, well, alcohol is a problem, but being drunk's not a problem. Being drunk is a great place for Mick, because I feel nothing, and I have no sense of consequence, and I have no sense of what's going to happen during or after me being drunk. I don't care. So being drunk, I am numb, and drinking was my solution, and it was my solution to everything, right? And I think most alcoholics are the same. But God decided in his wisdom that this guy was going to get sober, and I found myself in a thing called a phone box. Because some people don't know what right. My kids say, no, Dad, that's a phone, right? So anyway, I was in a phone box, and I phoned Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, my mother had been in the fellowship for 13 years, so, and Oban's a small town, right? So you get the picture, right? Small town, AA meeting, everybody knows everybody, right? There is no hiding place, none whatsoever. And I turn up at this meeting, and I'm 26, and the next oldest guy to me is about 50, right? So he's like my age. He's an old guy, right? And I'm like, no way. This is not happening. I'm not staying here. Keep sober company. I don't know any sober people. We're sober. I'm not hanging about with you lot, right? No way. I'm not talking about, some of these guys could remember the war, right? I was like, I'm not staying here. Then though, do you know, they'd done this really clever thing. They started talking about how they thought and how they felt, never mind drinking, but they started talking about how they were obsessed with alcohol, and how that when they weren't drinking alcohol, they were thinking about it, and how they were planning everybody else's life. She'll be there, he'll be here, I'll get drunk, I'll tell him this, I'll tell him that, but I'll really be doing this. And they were making all these schemes and plans and hiding money, telling people you didn't have money when you did, stealing, cheating, right? When they started talking about that, I was like, wow, these guys are the same as me. I do all this, but they're admitting it. They're telling the truth. I couldn't tell you what day. If I told you the time, you would have to check your watch, right? That's the kind of way I was. And you shake my hand, you'd have to count your fingers, right? One of them. And I thought, wow, these guys have really got something in here. And I thought, maybe I should do this. Now, the man that became my first sponsor, God rest his soul, he was called Frank. Frank threw me out of his house one day, and rightly so, because I just opened the door drunk, walked in and shouted, "Help!" And he said, "I'll help you, son." And he was eating his dinner on a tray, and he put the tray down and he walked me to the door. He opened the door and he put me out and said, "You can come back when you've learnt some manners." And I'm boiling. I'm going to burn his house down, right? By the way, I don't know anything about resentments yet, right? No got to that bit. So I'm going to, I'm going to torch his car. I'm going to do all kinds of stuff. The man was absolutely right. So I goes back to see Frank and says, "Hey, Frank, we're all right. The world's a safe place. I'm stopping drinking." And he said, "Okay, so like, what do we call it a public holiday? You know, what will we get the flags out? What do we do?" And he was the first man who described to me that there was more wrong with Mick than drinking, and that alcoholism had more symptoms than just not being able to drink. Step one to me was made absolute sense. So I'm powerless over alcohol, right? You know, so I'm powerless over oily fish, right? I can't eat tuna. I can't eat kippers or sardines, right? Because it makes me sick. But I don't crave tuna, because tuna never done anything for me, right? Apart from make me sick. But so I just don't eat it, right? Because I'm powerless over it. But alcohol did everything for me. And I came to understand that alcohol was my God and my power. And it had every ounce of my being was dictated to by alcohol, by either drinking it or how I was going to get drink for it. And I had to come to understand that I was going to have to find this power greater than me that was going to restore me to sanity. Sanity that I didn't even know I suffered from. I thought that somebody who was insane was like, you know, in a straitjacket and one flew over the cuckoo's nest. Right, that was my prejudice impression of what somebody was like. And Frank described to me and he said, "Joe, when you go for a drink, you think you're only going for a couple of drinks?" I says, "Yeah." He said, "Have you ever had a couple of drinks in your life?" I said, "No." He says, "That's insanity." And he said, "Furthermore, there will be times when you know that the chaos and the madness is going to happen again. And at the end of your drinking, you will be lying curled up in a ball in the fetal position with the 4 horsemen at the bottom of your bed, and you'll be praying for the end, but you'll do it anyway." I said, "Yeah." He said, "That's insanity, son." I said, "Yeah, I suppose it is." Frank came from a very hard area of Glasgow. There was no, like, you know, like, I don't know where you guys live, but, you know, wherever a really tough part of town is, that's where he came from. His favourite hobby was gang fighting, right? Put it that way. Hitting people with bits of wood and whatever else, right? That was like a pastime for him. So there was no way I was going to kid this man on. He was also very smart. And he started talking to me about a God of my perception. Because God and yeah, listen, I believed in God. Yeah, right. I just didn't think he liked me. Right. I just thought, you know, there is a God and he's got loads of pals, but I'm not one of them. Because if God liked me, why did he give me this life? Why was I born into it? Because when I come to AA, it's all about Mick, right? It's all about me, my pain, my problems, my disappointments in life, my heartache, the people that I've got to put up with. It's all Mick, Mick, Mick. And that has to change, or else I won't stay here and I will get drunk or I'll do something. And Frank said to me, "You're going to have to get a relationship with a power greater than you, but not the one that you think you know right now. I'll tell you a thing about God, right? Well, I'll tell you a thing about God. That sounds as if him and I are good pals, but we are. What I believe, right? He's sitting here just now, right there. And he's there all the time. And he always has been. Everywhere I have been in my life, God has been with me. I chose to close the door and to keep him out. And I chose to ignore any signs and any guidance that God was trying to give me and trying to put in my path. I chose to ignore it. And I understand that today. I didn't understand that when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't learn that in a church. I didn't learn that in school. I learned that in here, in these rooms, from wonderful people like you guys that are sitting on here. And I tell you something else that's great about God, right? See, if you want to talk to him, he's always there. It's like you wake up at 4 a.m. You don't need to think, oh, he'll be sleeping. He's up. And you don't need to phone him. And you don't get that, thank you for calling God. For resentments, press 1. For guilty conscience, press 2. For burning bright, you don't need to do that. To request a call back, dial in your number and press #. He's just there. He's there all the time. And he's in people. He's in you guys. He's in people that I don't even expect him to be in. 2 types of teachers in my life. People who teach me what to do and people who teach me what not to do. And God's working through them all. But I just didn't know that. And I, hey, don't know what you don't know, right? So I got this higher power in my life. But here's something else that annoys me a wee bit. It doesn't annoy me. But anyway, see, when I started, so I was talking about this today. When you get God into my life, right, and I started to develop a relationship with a power greater than me, it is not going to happen overnight. Well, let me put it this way. It didn't happen overnight for me, right? Maybe some of you guys, maybe you knelt down and said the step 3 prayer and that was it, bingo, right? Maybe, and see if you did, I love you, right? If you did, you are so lucky. That is not my experience. My experience is, okay, we've got to step 3, wonderful. Every morning, Lord, I give myself today to do it and hand it all over, take away my difficulties, at victory over them, may bear witness to those I will help if I love thy way of life, right? Blah, blah, blah. I'm doing all my prayers, great. I then leave the bedroom, and by the time I've got to the bathroom, my will's back. As quick as that. And people that I've not even seen for days are annoying me. People I've not seen for years. People walk by me in the street, my job, whatever it might be. Things are starting to crawl back in because I've taken my will back. It took time, right? And it still does. There's days, yeah, I've been cutting about here for 24 years and I've still got days where I heard a man saying once, he said, I handed my will over 25 years ago and I've never had to do it again. And I thought, no wonder you're angry. No wonder you go about here with a face like thunder and you hate everybody. Because how can that work? Anyway, it's none of my business. But I don't agree with it, but there you go. I've got to do it every day. And sometimes I've got to do it a couple of times a day. And I don't think that's a big deal. And I don't think that it's much to ask. And I tell you one thing, he's never let me down. Frank says to me, there's God's will and your will. And the trick that you've got to pull off is make them both the same. But God's will never moves because it's always the right thing. And if I choose the right thing, I'm doing God's will. And if I'm choosing Mick's will, things usually start to go south and get a bit difficult and get a bit tight. Step 10 is a wonderful gift. We continue to watch for jealousy, resentment, anger, frustration, whatever it can be, any character defect, right? Frustration, whatever it might be. When these crop up, it doesn't say if these crop up. I don't know about you guys, but it happens to me quite a lot. The beauty of it is the more I practice this, the easier it becomes. The more I give my life to God, the easier it becomes on Mick. And the more easier it is on Mick, then the more ability I have to be of service to somebody else, because there has got to come a point in my life where it is no longer about Mick. I've got to come here and I have to give rather than take. I've got to go to meetings to find the new guy. And by the way, the new guy doesn't mean somebody that's necessarily 2 days sober. It can be somebody with 23 years that's never looked at a program in their life. The guy that's just crippled inside and just doesn't know how to get out. The guy that doesn't know how to say the words, I don't know. The guy that can't say, please help me. Whatever that might be. Somebody shared very early on in the Zoom thing when it all started, when lockdown happened, I heard the man say this and it changed my attitude. I heard the man say, he said, we assume that the newcomer knows what to ask. And it just about knocked me over. And I was about 22 years sober at the time, and I started thinking about all the people that I had met. 22 years, you meet a lot of people, right? I thought, wow, man, how many guys have I met that I could have said to them, hey, mate, do you want to ask anything about this? Is there anything you would like to ask that, you maybe don't want to ask in front of other people? Do you want to, what is a big book? What do the steps mean? What does anything? And so I don't let that opportunity go anymore. And I make a point of finding the guy. Where are you? Where's the guy? You sit down with a guy that's just desperate and he's hanging on to sobriety by his fingernails and he doesn't really want to do it, but somehow he knows he has to. And you just give him a wee bit of help and just give him that just even if it's an ear to shout at. What is it you want to do, my man? This is what sobriety is all about. You're going to need to get an understanding of a higher power into your life so that you can live by your will by that power. You're going to have to get through this and you're going to have to start thinking and have this psychic change we talk about. And this is how you're going to do it. Come on and I'll give you a hand. Have you got a big book? No? Right, we'll get you one. Let's go. Start reading. Start doing something. There's nothing worse. I sat in meetings for too long doing nothing. Talking. Yeah, I could talk. Jeez, man, I can talk for Scotland. I'll talk here all night. Sit and talk. I can tell you funny stories. I can do all sorts of stuff, right? I play the drums in a pipe band, bagpipes, all that noisy stuff, right? Dad loves it, right? So I can do all that stuff. And I can tell you the places I've been and all that, and it's funny and it's interesting and da-di-da-di-da, right? But the guy that's sitting in the meeting with his head firmly implanted in a place it shouldn't be, he's not going to really get much out of that, is he? This guy played at the Vatican for the Pope. Big deal. I still want to kill myself, right? That story ain't going to help the guy. But if I say to him, look, my man, come on, get a big book. Come on, we'll talk about sobriety. What's in your head right now? What do you do when you get up in the morning? What do you do when life gets tight? What do you do when you want to beat somebody up? What do you do when you start thinking about leaving your wife again? What do you do? Right? What happens in your life? What action do you take? Let me give you some suggestions. It ain't that hard. But anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but that's just the way it goes. If God wants me to talk about that stuff, I'll talk about it, because God's pretty cool, right? Anyway. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory. What does that mean? The people I drank with did not talk about searching and fearless moral inventories, I'll tell you that. They talked about football, gambling, drinking, all sorts of stuff, but didn't talk about that. And when I started looking at all these things, people and institutions in my life that were keeping me awake at night, and I discovered there was a way that I could find freedom from them, that's attractive. I want some of that. I heard people saying that they had peace. I heard people saying, I go to bed at night and I sleep and I wake up and I am not scared. I'll have a big lot of that because that's really attractive to me, because I've not done that for a long time, right? So let's go, let's do that. And I want to stop thinking up all these ideas about how I'm going to go back to my hometown and I'm going to meet these guys that I didn't get on with, that done stuff to me when I was a kid, and I'm going to beat them up with big sticks and chains, and I'm going to tie them to a tree and I'm going to burn the tree. Right, you get the picture? The resentment, right? It's never nice stuff. You're never thinking, oh, I'm going to buy that guy dinner, right? It's always this really gory, horrible stuff, right? Why? Why do I do that? And why are these people still in my head 30 years down the line? I've got to take care of this stuff. And if I don't, I just become angry and bitter, and I'm not a nice guy to be around. And I had to make decisions in life and changes in my life that meant I was going to live sober. And I did find sober company, and it wasn't easy to keep on that path, but I had wonderful people round about me, and I still do, and I've always been blessed with the people. Some people that I have round about me, they don't tell me what I want to hear. And I like that, because you tell Mick what he wants to hear, I'll just do whatever I feel like. One of the worst pieces of advice I was ever given in my life, and I don't think that the person who said this, I don't think they meant it, but this person, I said, I've got a dilemma going on, and I'll tell you what the dilemma was. The dilemma was I was having a relationship with a female I shouldn't have been. And this woman said to me, and it's not her fault, she said, you do what's right for you. So I did. And I lost my wife, my kids, my job, my car, my house, my dignity, my self-respect, the whole lot. And I didn't take a drink. And I'm not saying I didn't take a drink for any kind of effect. I'm saying I didn't take a drink because drink had nothing to do with it. But selfishness, self-centeredness, and dishonesty had everything to do with it. And why did I get to that place? Because I stopped praying, because I stopped having a relationship with God, because I stopped doing service in Alcoholics Anonymous, and because I definitely stopped talking to Frank. And Frank was not the type of man for me to go to and say, by the way, I'm doing things I shouldn't be. He would just shoot you down in flames. He wouldn't stand for that stuff. And I knew that. But such is the self-centeredness of my illness. I'm not going to tell him, am I? Because he's going to tell me to stop it. And I don't want to hear that. So I didn't talk to him for 3 years. And eventually, when life caught up with me and I came to my senses, I spent 5 years in a relationship that I should not have been anywhere near. And I spent that 5 years in fear. And I've been coming to Alcoholics Anonymous for 11 years. So why does that happen? I'll tell you why it happened to me. Because I stopped doing everything that I was taught. My illness isolated me. It told me it would be a good idea. And listen, I'm not making excuses here, right? No, right? Don't get the wrong idea. I'm not trying to condone anything that I've done. Not in the slightest. Guilty as charged, Your Honour, right? Drop the gavel. I'm going down to the slammer, right? But all these things happened in my life because I stopped doing everything that I was taught. And it didn't come good again until I went to a meeting. I went to a meeting and I walked in the door and I was in a terrible place. Hey, but here's the funny bit, right? You wouldn't know, because I would go to a meeting and I'd walk in going, hey, how you doing? Yeah, you all right, Stephen? Yeah, cool, man. Hey, Dan, how are you? All right, Robert? Looking good, man. Yep. Right. And everybody thinks Mick's a wonderful guy and he's happy. Inside, I have a knot in my stomach that you could have tied up the QE2 with. My head is spinning like a washing machine. I've got so many things going, I don't know which way's up. I'm getting into lots of debt and I'm people pleasing everywhere. And am I talking to God? Well, no, not really. But I knew I had to start doing it. And I knew I had to start being honest. And God's still sitting there all the time going, God's sitting there going, Mick, I'm here. I'm here. But again, I chose to ignore him. This is in what I'm so-called sobriety, by the way. I'm not drinking during this time. But all the other symptoms of my illness were running riot within me. And I knew I had to find the way back out. And I knew where the way out was. I went to a meeting and a man asked me to share at the meeting. And I said, no. First time in my life, I says, no, I can't share today. And somebody said to me, it might be just what you need to do, Mick. Now, I don't know why that man said that, because he knew nothing about me. But he said it, and I sat down and I was completely honest. And I sat down in the meeting and I said, my name's Mick. I'm an alcoholic. and I'm absolutely terrified. And I don't know what to do, and I'm scared. And people started laughing because they thought I was going to, they were waiting on a punchline, right? Because usually with me there would be, but no, not this time. I left the meeting, I left the relationship I was in. I drove up to see Frank and I spent 2 days in his house, and we talked and we had a laugh and it was wonderful. And I got back in the middle of the bed and I started going to meetings again and I started working with guys again. And I joined a new group and I'd done all the things that I'm supposed to do. And I went and made amends and I went and done more step forward. And I went and wrote for Scotland about what I'd been doing. And I told it all to Frank and I gave it up to God and he took it all. And God said to me in page 70 of the big book, he said, if we are truly sorry for what we have done and we are willing to take God as to better places, then we believe we are forgiven, and I believe that. And the reason I believe that today is why I can tell you that, because I couldn't talk about these things before I had done the work in here. And I couldn't tell you that without getting angry. I couldn't tell you that without feeling resentful or bitter. But I can tell you today, and the reason I tell you is that if you're in here and you're doing the work and you're doing all the things that we're asked to do, and God bless you, you know, and geez, man, you know, if you're doing that stuff, then, you know, I love you, right? And if you're not, please have a go. And if you're in here and you're doing the work and you're whatever length of time sobriety you've got, and if you're in service and whatever else, but there's something going on in your life and you're living in fear, please trust me, there's a way beyond it. And there is a freedom at the other side that very, very similar to what I found when I first came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's a gift. I feel sometimes that I was given the gift twice. I just didn't need to go back out and the drink to do it. I believe today if I drank, I would be dead because the world has changed so much. But it proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that the program I work today has not really got that much to do with drinking anymore. Yeah, absolutely, drinking's part of my illness. Of course it is. But I didn't drink during that period of my life. It was everything else that was going on. And I found recovery from that the same as I have found recovery from the drinking side of my illness. And that proves to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that I have been able to find a way of living that I can be at peace with myself and the world round about me and all its people, thanks to a God of my understanding, the 12 steps of recovery and the fellowship of this wonderful fellowship that we get to be part of. I get today, right? I get to 12-step, guys. I get to go and take a guy to a meeting. I get to sit with him and say, it's all right, mate, you're going to stop shaking. Have a cup of tea. Life's going to be all right, right? It doesn't matter. Trust in God. I get the privilege of doing these things. I get to go to the most sordid places on earth and be of service because I know God's got me every time. Every time. Sometimes I get, hey, do you get scared? Aye. I'm a human being, right? Just, we keep burying people just now. It's horrific. But you know what? I know that God's got me safe and protected, and I know that He wants me to continue. And when I get up in the morning, I don't get up in the morning and think, oh my God, I've got this to do and that to do and the next thing to do. I get up in the morning and I say, right, God, what are we doing today? What is it? What's on? What have we got? What work have you got lined up for me? I don't believe, right? I don't believe that I can do God's work. I think that's God's work, right? And the biggest difference between me and God doesn't think He's me, right? So I can't do God's work. But what I can do is the work that He assigns me. And that's kind of different for me. And that way it works for me. Because if I start thinking I'm God, you know, where does that one end, right? You know, that's just going to end in misery and pain and whatever else and all the things that I don't want in life. But if I can keep connected to a power greater than me and be of service, you know, the big book talks time and time again about being of service. And it tells us to go and work with, working with another alcoholic saves the day. It's a design for living that works in the rough going. It doesn't say go to 20 meetings a week. It doesn't, I mean, they didn't have meetings when they wrote the book. Meetings were the place that newcomers could come to find them. How, you know, some of the stuff that went on in the early days of Alcoholics Anonymous, even here in Scotland, right, you know, where it's in Akron in New York, some of the infighting or whatever it went on, it is a miracle we're here, right? An absolute miracle that these guys survived all the trials and tribulations to lay down a path that we are allowed to follow. And God bless them, you know, geez, man, come on. When we talk about, sometimes I find myself talking about Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob and, you know, Silkworth. What a guy, right? Where would we be without Silkworth? This guy, drunks come into his hospital and he said, it's okay, I'll treat you, when other doctors wouldn't. God rest his soul. He's somebody else who, you know, the sense, how did he know, right? How did he know, if he's not an alcoholic, the sense of ease and comfort comes at once? How do you know that? He didn't say in the book, it comes a week on Tuesday, you know, or it comes in the post, or we will email you with the sense of ease and comfort. He says it comes at once, and it does. It does. How did he know it? Right. Without these guys, I'm not talking to you tonight. Without these guys, I don't go to my bed and sleep. I don't be responsible to my children, to my job, to my family, to everybody around about me. I don't get to do that because God knows where I would be. And as a result of what these guys laid down for us before and giving us service and giving us a book, hey, imagine going to the doctor, right, and saying, I've got this thing wrong with me, doctor, and he says, here's a book, right? I don't know about you, but I've never been prescribed a book before, but that's what they were doing, right? And they give you a big book and they say, take that book away and read it. What? No, you've got me wrong, doctor. I need tablets, right? Tablets, or, you know, put me in hospital or something. No, take this book. Pay attention to the directions, the warnings, and the suggestions, and do that. And that's what we do. Well, that's what I do, right? I can only talk about myself. And it doesn't matter where you're from. I get to sit here with you guys from all over the world and talk about my experience of being an Alcoholics Anonymous, and get to talk about how I can be at peace with the world, and how there are times in life when it does get complicated. Let's be honest, right? People don't do the things that I want them to do. People don't speak to me the way I want them to speak to me. People don't behave the way I would want them to behave. And I'm okay with it. That's massive, right? Absolutely massive. Because that was the psychic change that came about, a part of it, the rearrangement and displacement of the old ideas that were once the guiding directions of my life had been changed to, do you know what? It's okay if he doesn't like me. Don't care. It's okay if that guy thinks I'm some kind of rambling idiot. Go to another meeting. It's cool. I don't need the world to be my friend. But I need to be a friend to the world. And I need to be of service. I need to be where God wants me to be. And step 10 and step 10 is so precise and such a wonderful. I was talking to a sponsee about this the other day, and I said to him, do you use step 10? He said, what? I said, do you continue to watch for all these character defects, and then when they crop up, ask God to remove it? The directions are pretty simple, right? It's like saying to somebody, where's the grocery store? And they say, down the street, first left, first right, right? The directions are as simple as that. You know, stop at the red light and go at the green light, right? It's quite easy. It says we ask God to remove it at once. We turn our attention to it. We make amends if necessary and turn our attention to somebody we can help. It doesn't need to be an alcoholic. Make your wife or your husband a cup of tea. You know, go and do somebody's shop, whatever. Give somebody a lift. Just be of service to somebody else. Because the way for me to stop, to arrest my selfishness is to be selfless and to go and help somebody else and go and do something that doesn't mean, and don't want any return. Wow, there's a change, right? Like, I'm going to do something good for you and I don't even want you to thank me. Because I know God's got me and I know that God's watching over me and he's going, cool mate, nice one. I've got another one for you in 5 minutes. And he'll throw things at me. And people, you get lessons from people that you don't like. You know, they used to say, if you want to grow spiritually, do something for somebody else and don't get found out, right? And if you really want to grow spiritually, do something for somebody you don't like and don't get found out. Right, try that one. That's a real belter, right? But I had one not so long ago where a man that I don't really get on with said something that upset me. But the bottom line is this: the man was right. So whether I like him or not is irrelevant. I have to take on board what he said, and I had to make amends and move on from it. And I was able to do that with a 12-step program in here. I didn't learn that in school. I didn't go to school. I didn't learn that in school. I didn't learn it in church. I learned it in this fellowship. And it was everybody else's example. The most wonderful examples of people that I know on this planet are in this fellowship. Hey, there's some pretty bad ones as well, right? Let's be honest. There's some guys, you hear them share and you go, wow, what was that all about? You come out of some meetings thinking, I need a meeting, right? You know, I heard a woman say recently, she said, I've never been to a meeting I didn't enjoy. I thought, well, keep coming, you know, just keep coming. That'll happen. But you know what? Somebody else enjoyed it. Maybe the guy sitting next to you enjoyed it. I was at a meeting in Glasgow one time and there was a person sharing that. Person's not my cup of tea, right? Like, just that's enough said. And where I was sitting, I was trapped. I couldn't get out. And I was beside a window and I was contemplating climbing out the window and going down the drain pipe because I didn't want to listen to this person, right? And I heard God saying in my head, Mick, just you sit there and practice tolerance because the guy sitting next to you thinks she's wonderful. And I sat there going, thanks, God. Cheers, mate. Thanks. Thanks. But I still sat and I still had to be tolerant. And the person shared and people did enjoy that person because it's nothing to do with me. Because it's not all about Mick. And the world doesn't revolve around Mick. And that's a wonderful responsibility to have removed from me. Because I used to think it did. And I had to be all things to all people and I don't today. That's God's job. I can't do his job. The big man's got it all covered. Way more than I would ever have. Step 12 is a huge part of my life. And I hope and pray that it never changes. I listen to people. I was listening to a man the other night. I go to a meeting on a Thursday. I go to Outright Mental Defectives. Some of the guys are on here. I discover, yeah, there's Tim and Marcel. Like, they're there all the time in Mags and Darren. Yeah. Love you, brother. My brother from another mother. That's close enough. Right. And I know Jeff's here somewhere and Phil, right, and whoever else. And I saw the flyer for it and it said Outright Mental Defectives. And I said, I've got to go to that meeting. That just sounds great. Anybody that calls a meeting that's worth a laugh. Do you know what I mean? Because listen, I'll finish with this. The big book tells me that God wants me to live happy, joyous, and free. And it says we absolutely insist on enjoying life. It doesn't say have a nice day once a week or have a happy weekend every end of the month. It says we absolutely insist on enjoying life. And I laughter is a wonderful therapy. And the guys that I hang around with in Scotland here and online when I go to places like Outright Mental Defectives, we all laugh and joke. I just recently buried one of my closest friends in the fellowship. And he was 36 years sober when he died, and he laughed every day, every single day. If you met this man, you within 30 seconds of meeting him, you'd be laughing, right? He was just that type of guy. And he died. And when we buried him, you know, his wife asked me to do the eulogy, and I could have talked all day about the guy, but the most wonderful gift he just left so many memories. But the most overwhelming and the biggest thing of all that he left was that he always wanted us to laugh and to enjoy life, regardless of what was going on. I met this man. I went to see him in hospital, and he had half his lung removed, and he was making jokes about the surgeon who had taken his lung out. Right, that's the type of guy he was. He's got all the cables, you know, like all the machines in the hospital connected to him. And he's sitting. I said, "You're not looking too clever, my man. You know, you're looking a bit rough." And he's like, "Rough." Anyway, I won't say what he said because you wouldn't understand. But basically, he said the surgeon didn't look too clever. Right, there you go. That's the type of guy he was. And every time I think about him, I smile. And every time I think about him, I have a laugh. And I think of a happy memory. And it's a wonderful, wonderful legacy for him to have left. And I hope and pray that when my day comes, it'll be something similar. Because that's all I wanted when I came here was peace. And I just want to enjoy life and go about it, leaving people in a happier place than I found them. And I hope and pray I've done that tonight. God bless you all. Thanks again, Phil. It's been an absolute privilege. God bless. Glad to be on Solar.